पुरीते भरसा बारिल ज्ञाने गति अभिमानी से आशा विफल से ज्ञान दुर्लभ से आशा विफल से ज्ञान दुर्बल से ज्ञान अज्ञान जानी से आशा विफल से ज्ञान दुर्बल से ज्ञान ज्ञान जानी जड विद्या जत मायार वैभव तुम्हार भजने बाधा मोह जन्मिया अनित्य संसारे जीव के कोर ये गांधा से गादा होइए संसारे रे से गदा होइए संसार रे रब होइए संसारे रब हो जाए पिबनु अनेक काल बाधखे खान शक्ति रे अभावे किछु नाही लागे भालो जीवन जातना होइलो एखना ए विद्या अविद्या बेलो अविद्या ज्वाला गथिलो विषमा से विद्या होइलो शेलो तुम्हार चरण बिना किछु धन संसारे नाचे हार तुम्हार चरण बिना किछु धन संसारे नाचे भक्ति विनोद जड विद्याचारी तया पदे खोरे सार भक्ति विनोद जड विद्याचारी तया पद खोरे सार Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivijikacharya Ashtotar Shatashishimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivijikacharya Ashtotar Shatashishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnavindi Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamkunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mathura Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki All glories to the Assembly Devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the Assembly Devotees Hare Krishna All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga All glories to Srila Prabhupada Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, reading from Canto 3, Chapter 6, text number 35. Etat kshatah bhagavatah daiva karma atma rupinah kah shraddhayat upakartum yogamaya bala udyam etakshatar bhagavato. How do I say? How do I do this? Etat shatar bhagavato daiva karmatma rupinah kashadhayad upakartum yogamaya balodayam etat kshatar bhagavato daiva karmatma rupinah kashadhayad upakartum yogamaya balodayam etat kshatar bhagavato daiva karmatma rupinah kashadhayad upakartum yogamaya balodayam etashattar bhagavato daiva karmatma rupinah etashattar bhagavato Mataji's. Etat, this. Kshataha, O Vidura, Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Daiva Karma Atma Rupinaha, of the gigantic form of the transcendental work, time and nature. Kaha, who else? Shraddha can aspire. Upakartum, measure in totality. Yogamaya, internal potency. Balaudayam, manifested by the strength of. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O Vidura, who can estimate or measure the transcendental time, work and potency of the gigantic form manifested by the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Purport. The froggish philosophers may go on with their mental speculations on the subject matter of the Virat, the gigantic form exhibited by the Yogamaya internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but factually no one can measure such a vast exhibition. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, the 11:16, Arjuna, the recognized devotees of the Lord, says, Aneka bahudara vaktram netram pashyami tvam sarvato nandarupam anantam na madhyam na punastavadim pashyami vishveshvara vishvamrupa. O my Lord, O gigantic Vishvarupa form, O Master of the universe, I can see innumerable hands, bodies, mouths, and eyes in all directions, and they are unlimited, are all unlimited. I cannot find the end of this manifestation, nor do I see the middle or the beginning. Bhagavad Gita was specifically spoken to Arjuna, and the Vishvarupa was exhibited before him at his request. He was awarded the specific eyes to see this Vishvarupa. Yet, although he was able to see the Lord's innumerable hands and mouths, he was unable to see him completely. Since Arjuna was unable to estimate the length and breadth of the potency of the Lord, who else would be able to do so? One may only indulge in miscalculations like the frog philosophers. The frog philosopher wants to estimate the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean by his experience of 3 feet large. And thus he began to puff himself up to become as big as the Pacific Ocean. But at last he burst and died by his process. This story is applicable to the mental philosophers who, under the illusions of the Lord's external energy, indulge in estimating the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord. The best path is to become a cool-headed, submissive devotee of the Lord. Try to hear about the Lord from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus serve the Lord in transcendental loving service as suggested in the previous verse. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadam Mayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyatapatakalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Tajivam Sadhaitam Savaditam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vijakam Vitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavane Shri Vishwabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripe Panchakalpatarivasya Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Putale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Namane Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Putale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarni Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jnananandamayam Devan Nirmal Spatikakritam Adaram Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Vasvahe Guru Vaishna Bhagavanti Nirasmarana Hoy Vigna Vinashana Naya Shehe Nija Vanchita Puranam. Srila Prabhupada in this verse makes a really, what stood out to me the most here is the best path is to become a cool-headed devotee, cool-headed, submissive devotee of the Lord. So here, Srila Prabhupada is giving us the purport here according to the Virata Rupa that has been explained of how people try to understand this Virata Rupa and how actually it's very difficult to do so. That generally we'll see that, well, this Virata Rupa is the universal form of the Lord, and we see the scientists trying to understand that deeply. They're trying to understand it in many ways. Where did these materials come from? Where did these gases come from? Where does energy come from? How is gravity come about? How is the whole universe held together? What is earth? What is matter? What is all of these things? What is antimatter? What is dark matter? The study of nature, study of time, study of all of these things that are being mentioned, the energy that is present in the universe. And it's very difficult for them to do so. And when they do so, when they do come up with some philosophy, just like Einstein, and we have Einstein and Newton, come up with all these laws and different equations to quantify and calculate the different workings of nature within the universe, they become very puffed up by it. I have become such a great scholar now. I put everything into an equation. I defined, or I gave the understanding there was gravity, but actually these things were already all there. And that somehow or other, buddhi buddhimatam asmi, that Krishna has given them some level of intelligence to be able to write these things down into some form in which they can measure everything. And that is the ultimate conclusion for the atheist or the mental philosophers or the speculators or the scientists, is that everything must be quantifiable. Everything must be able to be captured with my own intelligence. Otherwise, we cannot discuss such things, or we cannot come to any conclusion at all. And that's what often philosophy is about. You discuss, but you can't come to a conclusion. Why? Because you don't know. But they don't like to say we don't know. But you say, well, there's no end to coming to this discussion. And to some extent, yeah, like Guru Maharaj says, when you discuss in philosophy, you can't really come to an end because you can redefine or define everything. What is, okay, so just like this guy came to into the ashram over there in Athens, and he is studying Marcus Aurelius. Everybody knows who that is. He's a philosopher from where exactly? He's Greek philosopher. He's a Greek philosopher, right? He's a Roman emperor, and is very well known amongst the modern philosophers, and actually regarded as very high in specifically his book Meditations. I think is famous, in which he writes about so many different ideas. And so this boy, I was asking, so what's the basic idea that you're kind of discussing here? And it's like, well, Marcus Aurelius says that universe is ultimately good. And that, what else is he saying, Ali? That the universe is ultimately good, and then that there's another point that he was making, I forget. But anyways, I kind of asked him the question, so then how do you define what is good? How do you say what is good? Who defined what is good? You say universe is good, but we see so many bad things around us. Then who defines what that good is? And he's like, that's a good question. I don't have an answer. Because actually their philosophy at every point lacks knowledge. Because as Bhaktivinoda Thakur expresses, by nature is actually ignorance because of the changing nature of it. That it is always moving, it always changing, that scientists don't want to admit, I don't know. They just think, well, now we've improved it. That's often the words they use. Oh, we understand a little bit more about this now. But actually, if you really bluntly say, actually, oh, you didn't know, you're completely wrong about it. But one who is bewildered by the false ego, the living entity, struggles to admit such faults, and continues in his illusioned way of life because he's got so much prestige, name, fame, adoration, distinction, so he's completely bewildered by that. So even when he's wrong, he cannot admit it. Even though the scientists may be wrong in their conclusions, actually it's foolish when you analyze it. You give them some understanding. Oh, he was saying that everything is energy in the universe, something like that. And then we're making the point, well then, how do you explain this light? For this light to come on, somebody has to turn it on. Even for good to exist, there has to be somebody who decides what that good is. The universe is inherently good, but you can't say something impersonal is good in that sense, because there needs to be decision factor. Okay, who takes that decision? Just like if this table exists, as whether it's good or bad, who defines that? Who defines that? Well, the person defines that. So how can all of these ideas exist without a person? But then they don't accept that. Well, let me think about it. Let me deeply think about it. Okay, you can go ahead, go on your mental trip and mental speculation about all over the universe of how or what, defining what good is and such. But again, you'll have to come to the conclusion of confusion. Okay, how do we define it? Relative, it's all relative. What is good to, like we would make the point often, we like to give extreme examples to them that Hitler, for him, good is that, to kill the Jews. For the Jews, it's bad. So then who defines it? And then what is energy? Who gives the energy? Where does the energy come from? So they go on this mental trip, but they're not willing to accept any level of conclusion. Why? Because every Muni has to have his own philosophy. And that's what gives them pleasure. It's a perverted way of deriving pleasure on the platform of the mental. It's like mental masturbation going on. Actually, the pleasure derived there is often also said that is higher than just sense enjoyment itself. So you'll see great philosophers, they're restrained, they're detached to some extent from the material world. They often you'll see a lot of great scientists or philosophers, they often were celibates also. Why? Because they're enjoying, it's the same mentality but taken onto the platform of the mind, taken on the platform of just this mental speculation. So they study these froggish philosophers may go on with their mental speculation on the subject matter of the Virat, the gigantic form exhibited by Yogamaya, internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but factually no one can measure such a vast exhibition. So we have the mental philosophers of the, the modern age of the scientists and such, and then we have them of the Vedic, also the Jnanis, who also do the same thing. And in Brahma Samhita, we see that even though they may travel at the speed of the mind, they can't even come to the platform of just Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that can't even conceive of the effulgence of the Lord. They can't even see the lotus feet of the Lord. So it is interesting that they may go on, and okay, the Virata Rupa, this and this and this and that, but they can actually never come to any conclusion or any measurement of the Virata Rupa, because one thing is they're trying to see, just like here, that Prabhupada is giving an example of the froggish philosophers. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur similarly gives the analogy of someone who is trying to understand truth as compared to trying to see the sun at night by a torchlight. No, the sun has to reveal itself. You cannot find the sun at night with a torchlight. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And this is compared by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He's got the book. What is that book called? There's all these stories are there with the frog and the Upakanya Upadesh. Yeah, in which he tells all of these stories and analogies. And this is one such that somebody's trying to see the sun at night by holding a torchlight up to it. So this is the foolishness of the philosophers and the munis and the yogis and the jnanis of this within the Vedic tradition and within also the standard materialistic civilization of the modern age. That they're trying to understand, they're trying to come to some truth, some conclusion. But it is not possible for them, as this is exactly what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quotes here. Out of his own mercy, Krishna reveals all scriptural conclusions to those who please him by their service attitude. Trying to understand the absolute truth merely by learning and celebration is like trying to see the sun at night by holding a torchlight. And so Krishna, trying to make it even more of a point in the Bhagavad Gita, trying to hit on the jnanis a little bit more, he does this to Arjuna also. He shows his universal form to Arjuna. Of course, Arjuna says, okay, show me your universal form. But he shows that and he explains to Arjuna that you do not have the eyes to see, but now I shall give you divine eyes. Behold my mystic opulence. Here, see. And then Arjuna is shocked. He's completely afraid, scared. I'm in anxiety, seeing all of these things. I cannot measure it. I'm seeing it, but I cannot measure it. In one sense, you could say this is a little bit of an attack to the jnanis who are trying to understand. Because Arjuna can see, and he can see all of these things, but still he's saying, I cannot measure it. I cannot see beyond thousands of heads, thousands of mouths, everybody going into the fire. I cannot see. I cannot measure. How can I? It's like bewildering. This is bewildering, Arjuna. Please, Krishna, please, retract his form. I do not want to see this anymore. It's a little bit of poke, you could say, to the jnanis, because like you want to see, and look, Arjuna is seeing, and he still cannot measure, and you're trying to measure without having even these divine eyes, by which Krishna must give those divine eyes, and still you cannot measure. How will you be able to measure with your small intelligence? It's a direct attack upon the jnanis, who are trying to bring themselves up to this level of being able to see, but they cannot see, because they require that those divine eyes, which are granted. And we see that even Markandeya Rishi, he wanted to see the form of the Lord in that okay, like, he's performing devotional service, Narayana Rishi come. It's like, and then he says, I would like to see your Maya form. And then he goes and he has to go into an ocean. My God, that's probably the scariest section of the Bhagavatam, where he's just swimming and the Timingala fish are trying to eat him up and spending millions of years swimming around, always in anxiety. And then finally he sees, baby Krishna floating around, and then everything is retracted and he's back to Badrikashrama. But the point being that even devotees, sometimes they want to see. Even devotees, who are dedicated to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they want to see. Arjuna wants to see, show me your Virata Rupa, please. Markandeya Rishi, I want to see your external energy, my Lord. Or within our devotional line, because, we have so much philosophy, and Vedanta is, the central point of our philosophy. Sometimes we want to become philosophers. Sometimes that desire is there within the heart of jnana, to trying to just acquire knowledge. And we see that within our devotions. Different devotees, of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and we have there's a place for that, but often Saraswati Thakur condemned some of his disciples from just studying for the sake of studying. He would often say that this is like a wild goose chase, or that specifically in the endeavor of the jnanis, he would say that Saraswati Thakur condemned as a wild goose chase the endeavor of the jnanis and the mundane academics to try to measure and understand the sum total of everything, considering them the subject and all else, including Krishna, the object of their knowledge. He would warn, don't try to comprehend everything by your puppy brains. So Saraswati Thakur would make the point to his disciple, so don't try to just study. What is the mood of study? Is sincerity. That one approaches this whole subject matter of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness with a submissive and sincere attitude of learning, not with the desire to become a jnani, not to desire to become a learned man. Because we can see that it is very clear that that is not what actually exactly is the characteristic of devotional service. Sometimes we may see like that within our movement, this devotee knows so much, there must mean he's a great devotee. Actually, that is not the case at all. The qualification for devotional service is not to be greatly learned in within the science of devotional service. Even you can say, well, the science of devotional service does mean the practice of devotional service. But you can say the knowledge, just the knowledge aspect of it, just the jnana aspect of it. Because we can see so many devotees who are very well learned, very good in their speech, but in their behavior, not very good. So Srila Prabhupada a few verses ago in the purport said, a devotee should have the qualifications of a Brahmana but the behavior of a Vaishnava. That should be a devotee's quality. What is the behavior of a Vaishnava? Tinadapi sunichana tarapi saishna amanina manadina kirtaniya sanahari nadhanam na janam na sundarim na kavitam va jagadishikame mama janmani share bhavitar bhakti rahituki. That is the attitude. What is his activities? Srila Rupa Goswami teaches us that. Srila Prabhupada says that the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement are guided by Srila Rupa Goswami, dadati pratigranati gohyam akyati prachati bhunkte bhajete chaiva shadvidam priti lakshanam. All of these things that Rupa Goswami gives, they're the behavior of the Vaishnava, that he is humble in his way and his attitude. And so his duty as a Vaishnava is not to approach the scripture with the same mentality of the froggish philosophers, of trying to, well, I must understand everything. I have to understand everything. Sometimes we have that, well, if I don't understand it, then I can't accept it. I have to understand everything with my intelligence. So here, a little bit more, where is this? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says a little bit more about the attitude of hearing. Okay, I lost it. But he specifically makes that point to his disciples, and often we would send his very learned scholarly disciples to some of his disciples that were illiterate. Do you remember the name of this devotee who was the gardener? I don't remember. But he specifically sent Bhagavat Maharaj, I believe Bhagavat Maharaj, he said, you should go learn from him the scriptural conclusions. Gopal? I might have it right here. I don't know if it's Gopal. There's two cases, and my spiritual master writes that those two cases could be actually one, just kind of. Anyways, main point, okay, here we go. Ram Das Prabhu was a gardener and a laborer at Sri Chaitanya Math. Low born and unlettered, he was ever busy in menial tasks, toiling in the fields, sweeping paths, throwing out garbage, all while chanting the Mahamantra. If anyone were to chastise him, he would humbly accept it and continue chanting and performing his duties. He had received Harinam, but not Diksha, which Srila Saraswati Thakur said was not required for him, and he was achieved everything by Harinam and Dham Seva. So, Bhagavat Maharaj approached him, and Ram Das Prabhu was like, why are you coming to me? I don't know anything. I'm not a very learned Pandit or anything like that. And he doesn't look like a Pandit either. But Srila Saraswati Thakur was very insistent upon Bhagavat Maharaj going and actually learning from him. He said, no, you go back and you ask him. And so, that he revealed that his practical realization of Sevanmukhi Jivado principle. I simply try to produce flowers and fruits for offering to the Lord. By doing so, I feel enlivened to always chant the holy names. I consider this the success of my life. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very pleased by hearing that, and then quoted a verse from I believe, the Srimad Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, saying that, or he would often say to such disciples, they have captured everything that I have said, in essence. They have so many philosophers and so many other disciples of mine who are very highly learned have heard so much from me. But this person here who is illiterate has understood the essence of what I am saying. So Srila Saraswati Thakur would specifically emphasize on this point of Sevanmukhi Jivado principle. That he would say that one cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his mundane learning, with just studying Shastra. He should approach it with this submissive and service attitude. And by doing so, that he did not require such learning, actually. Did not require it. He simply needed to have that genuine devotional service. And here, he accepted study as genuine devotion only if undertaken for self-purification and to gain knowledge for preaching, and warned the desire to become a pandit for self-aggrandizement or intellectual enjoyment. So hear from the lips of a pure devotee. Your guru will tell you which books to read one by one. Those who pour through myriad text without the instructions of the guru will never get bhakti. On the other hand, if you do not read at all, you will become a prakrita sahajya. So Srila Saraswati Thakur emphasized the need to have to study literature, but at the same time to do it with the proper mood, otherwise that one may fall into the realm of just trying to get some jnana. And because this specifically bhakti, as Bhakti Vikas Maharaj makes the point, the acquisition of knowledge was desirable only as a function of and subordinate to the bhakti principle of surrendered service. And that the attitude of service in conjunction with hearing from pure devotees was itself the vital factor in acquiring and realizing such knowledge. So it is that surrendered service attitude by which one actually gains knowledge. may study, one may understand verses, one may actually memorize verses and be able to give that explanation even. But if that mood of surrender and service is not there, then the divya jnana, then the vijnana will not be able to enter within the heart. We may be able to know so much philosophy, but our practice, our achar will not be proper. Our behavior will not be proper. For that Srila Prabhupada is saying in that purport, the Vaishnava behavior you must have Vaishnava behavior. Your behavior must be like a Vaishnava. Your activities, your actions must be like a Vaishnava. That will not take place. We may have so much knowledge, but we'll not be able to follow the principles of devotional service, which the central principle is surrender to Krishna. We'll not be able to do such things, and then we'll wonder, well, I've studied Bhagavad Gita, I've read Srimad Bhagavatam so many times, I've studied so much literature of the Acharyas, but I cannot follow the principles of devotional service. We've seen that so many great Pandit, you want to be Pandit, learn Sanskrit, study Goswami's works, but they're sleeping with other people's wives. What is the use? What is the use of your learning? Absolutely nothing, absolutely useless. But a devotee who doesn't know and may not know so many verses or be able to quote so many things, but is a simple sweeper at the temple, a simple cleaner, throws the trash out, takes care of little things here and there, goes around, but his mood and attitude is of that of a servant, as Srila Prabhupada makes the point with the Shudras. He says, actually, this is the only qualification. He says, Shudras are great servants, and actually, this is the only qualification to come to devotional service. All of the Varnas must have this qualification in order to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, we may have a hot head, as Srila Prabhupada said, one must be cool-headed, one may have a hot head, want to study so much, want to learn so much, want to acquire so much. But it may not do us so much use if we miss this central principle of surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead at every step. That we must remember that all of our learning and studies are subservient to the central point of bhakti, the surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That attitude must be maintained. Otherwise, everything is lost. We may learn so much, we may know so much, but we won't actually be able to make an impact in anyone's lives. As Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, that these things must be done for preaching, that one must learn these things for the purpose for preaching. And if it is not done so with the proper mood and attitude, then our words will not be able to enter within the hearts and cut through the ignorance of the conditioned souls. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says like that actually the only thing that can change the heart of the jiva is the pure holy name, or the katha that pure katha that is vibrated by the Vaishnavas. Without that, you cannot change the holy name. You may be able to defeat them in so much logic and reason and so much like this, but their hearts will not change. In Bhagavatam, we have that change of heart as the first chapter in the second canto. But that heart change of heart cannot take place until he himself has that devotional mood and attitude in his speaking, in his surrender to Krishna. Otherwise, it's not possible to make another person a devotee. It is that, just like we've often discussed, because if it was so, that it only required that, or it required one to be extremely learned, then we've seen so many examples of devotees, they just came because, like another devotee, just because he was very simple and sweet and just gave them a lot of love. Actually, that's most of the cases, is we come to devotional service because of the love that we feel from the devotees, the mood and the attitude, we're inspired by seeing that. So it is important for us to remember that, to be cool-headed, that we do not care for the worldly expectations or the, what is that proper word I'm trying to look for? We don't care so much for what others think. We simply try to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in doing so, Krishna will reveal everything. As Srila Saraswati Thakur makes the point here, that I have imbibed the meaning of all scripture by observing the exemplary character of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and my Gurudev Paramahansa Babaji. Important point, by observing the exemplary character very important point, the achar, the character of the Vaishnava. By observing them, by anusharan, by following in their footsteps, by observing them, one cannot realize the true purpose of Shastra by expertise in grammar or by memorizing roots and ending of words. If that was so, then the great worldly philosophers would have comprehended the factual import of Shastra. So it is simply by following in the footsteps of the acharyas, by following the footsteps of one's guru, in which he develops the proper mood and attitude by seeing. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur earlier defines what is seeing. By hearing. By hearing from the spiritual master. Tat Shrinu, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, now hear. That is how you see. You see by hearing from the Acharya. And by that hearing, you also observe their character, how they move in this world, how they function in this world. And by doing that, you can imbibe the meaning of all scriptures. How? By observing the character of a Vaishnava. It's pretty powerful. Not by going and becoming a great grammarian or learned scholar, such and such, but simply by being able to observe and understand and imbibe the mood and mission of the acharyas. One will be revealed all the scriptural injunctions, as there is a pastime in the Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav of the disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who wanted to go and study this grammar and learn Sanskrit, and he told him, why do you need to do such things? So why are you so hell-bent on going and learning all these things? You just preach. And then he started writing for the Gaudiya and doing a lot of editorial work. And by the end of it, I think he took some exam and he completely excelled it. And it was put out in this Harmonist, saying that he's not a learned scholar, he didn't study all these things, but he was able to excel more than all of these people that have been studying for years. How is it done? How is it possible? Because the Guru gives everything. The Guru gives that knowledge. Krishna reveals that knowledge onto that person who has that sevaunmukhehi jiva, the one who has that mood of service towards the spiritual master and the Vaishnavas. As we have that verse, Yasya devi para bhakti yatha devi tato guru tasyate katitahi artha prakashante mahatmanah. Unto such great souls who have dedicated themselves to the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality Godhead, all the imports of the Vedas are revealed. And the essence may not be, you may be a learned, super learned scholar, be able to do all that, but the essence of bhakti is completely, is imbued within the heart. The bhakti lata bija is watered at every moment when one has that mood. And that may manifest in different ways. So, the principle of being cool-headed, as Srila Prabhupada says, of submissive devotee of the Lord, trying to hear about the Lord from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus serve the Lord in transcendental loving service as suggested in the previous verses. One can do so by having this proper attitude in devotional service, hearing from the bona fide spiritual master, and making that the central aspect of his life, and having that submissive hearing. He'll be able to acquire all of the knowledge of the Vedas. He does not need anything else. He does not require anything else. So it is very important that we maintain this. Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur specifically says, by faith and submissiveness, rather than the spirit of academia that one should approach reading these books, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. In one case, a university wanted to have the Gaudiya Mutt come and teach the Chaitanya Charitamrita in a scholarly way, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur denied it. He said, you cannot understand. What will you understand? Chaitanya Charitamrita, you cannot understand by your academia. We are not interested in doing so. It's interesting. It's an institute, put into an institution. You're all mundane scholars. You'll approach this with a mundane vision. What will you understand? But at the same time, he's also sent a disciple to the University of England who did he did like 1,000-page work on the Gaudiya Vaishnav lineage and understanding of that, and that was posted that all of the professors were congratulating him for giving such pure understanding. So the emphasis being that one must have this mood of submissiveness, that he always maintain that when he's reading, that I'm doing this for the purpose of my own purification and for the purpose of trying to teach others the path of devotional service, that is all. And in order to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no other reason other than this. Jnana karmadya anavritam. No other principle. Everything is subservient to the principle of loving devotional service to Krishna. And so we can't neglect the study of Shastra, because that's the Sahajas do that also. They say you can't, they would criticize Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur for being so scholarly, because they say, well, it's all feeling. It's all feeling, so why are you studying? This is not what Gaudiya Vaishnava is. That was the push of the Prakriti Sahajas, that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they don't study. That we don't study, it's just all feeling towards Krishna. And when you study, that blocks the feeling. That's what, that was the whole understanding. But actually when you see, Ramananda Rai, and we examine everyone in their philosophy and their poems, and not even let them come even close to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srila Saraswati Thakur reignited, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they reignited the pure message of the philosophy of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition with proper mood and proper attitude, in which they were able to completely destroy the philosophy of the Brahmanas, who were completely against giving such shastric knowledge to the lower classes, and were able to establish the supremacy of Vaishnava and of devotional service. So this was all done. If you read Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, this Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, you understand the caliber of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur by what he had to do and how much challenges he had to face in preaching. And he gives all credit for that to who? To his gurus. Not to his learning and not to all of his shastric knowledge. My God, at the age of 10, 12, 13, 14, you're destroying all of these brahmanas and all of these learned scholars, and you're establishing Siddhanta. But he says, no, all of these things were simply done by the mercy of my guru, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, who externally looking is illiterate, practically illiterate, not a scholar at all. So the importance of service and surrender to the guru, it cannot be underemphasized. Simply by that, we can overcome all obstacles in preaching. Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tinir Smarana Hoy Vigna Vinashana Anayacha Hai Nanja Vanchita Purana. That all of these things can be destroyed, and the real desire of the Vaishnava, which is to spread the message of Krishna, what Krishna is teaching, and the message of the Acharyas can take place. The real desire of the Vaishnavas to give knowledge, to give this Krishna consciousness to the rest of the world can become manifest by our sincerity and submission to the Guru. So we can go on like this, understand, reading Srila Prabhupada's books in a cool-headed way, and try to advance in devotional service with a proper mood and attitude, undertaking the advice of Rupa Goswami, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So many nice songs, just like we read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs. So this is a nice purport, and just a small touch on that. So if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Anything at all? Sorry, I went 1 minute over time. Sorry about that. I'm banned from giving classes. I said 8:30 and then I go over.
Now, one of the challenges that you face, basically, this cool-headedness can be tied to the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction, Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam, where you have all these Vegas, which you can compare it to like the waves that agitate, the conditioned soul. And it's very hard to control these urges. So, so even though one may have knowledge as to what one needs to do, still one is, as Arjuna also states in Bhagavad Gita, so how is it that how are devotees, even when practicing Krishna consciousness, sometimes due to personal nature, weakness of heart, etc., they're not able to maintain a cool head, even though they know they have to maintain a cool head, and that prevents them from understanding, being humble. What do you do?
Be around other cool-headed people. It's association. So I understand that even there's one place Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes the point that if you're chanting Namaparad, just go sit around, just go sit next to someone and chant next to someone who's chanting like the pure holy name. Just go sit next to them. Or like this point is often made that you don't know, you just come and just sit next to the Vaishnava. That's it. That's all that's required. You don't have to do anything. Just come and be with the Vaishnavas. And just kind of occurring to me, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is making the point, by observing these acharyas. So if one is able to constantly see, like, and be around devotees who are like on that level of trying to practice devotion service, or on pure devotion service, then that should hopefully inspire us to kind of come to that position of like remaining cool-headed, seeing that example, following that example, because we want, whatever great personalities do, common men follow. So a simple solution is that one just bees around those who are cool-headed. And hopefully he'll stay cool in that way, because they may be able to chill him out and not become agitated, because there may be so many agitations. We have that experience. Sometimes we're agitated, like we're out on book distribution, and we're agitated because we interact with the wrong person, or it's an argument where it might be another woman, or whatever, a guy is like agitating. But as soon as you come back in the temple and with the Vaishnavas, all that agitation naturally just, falls away, and you're kind of absorbed in that association, and you no longer think about that so much. So it's important for us to remain amongst the association of other pure Vaishnavas in order to understand the mood and the attitude. Actually, it's because it's the culture. Mood and attitude, like how do you define that? Well, it's a culture. So you have to be around that culture in order to inculcate that culture. And so that is derived from Shastra, but you can't particularly, it's hard to get that just by reading. You have to be around those who are actually performing that process. It's like sometimes we read Srila Prabhupada's books when we first come to Krishna consciousness, and then we think this is what it means to be a pure devotee, and then we try to be a pure devotee according to what we've read, and it's like, it's completely wrong, So then we require like the association of devotees to actually and see, to observe, to be able to understand and harmonize it with the philosophy to come to that level. So the simple answer is just be around the Vaishnavas who are of that nature, and then hopefully that will rub off on us. It's a simple one.
Seems that even for that, one needs to have some level of faith.
Yeah.
Because you won't be able to understand the actions. You won't be able to understand why they're telling you to do what they're asking you to do, because you're on top of a mountain right now, and it's like you need to have some level of faith, otherwise it doesn't seem to work. There's a nice quote of Srila Prabhupada. This is 1971. Srila Prabhupada says, so people are trying to be like tiger. In India, a certain section of people, the Mohammedans, they say we want to be like Shera. Shera means tiger. And more and less in the Western countries also, everyone is trying to become a tiger, very powerful. But one should be very cool-headed. A tiger is very powerful. A tiger can attack anyone and kill him. That is very good, but what is the use of the tiger? Nobody is interested in the tiger. Rather, if the tiger comes within the city, immediately it will be shot down, because it has no use. But a humble meek cow, of course, here there is no protection of cow, but in India the cow is protected. It is a duty of the human being to give protection to the cow. So, Yeah, so then Prabhupada goes on, he says, because if human society does not give protection to the cows and does not cultivate Brahminical culture, then it is cats and dogs society. Therefore, it is given. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Point on that. That you see a lot, don't you? This tiger, and to be like a tiger. And all these like advertisements or whatever, people like, they compare themselves to all these like ferocious
Lions.
animals. And yeah, Prabhupada's making that point.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Navani Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, you're making this good point that just because the devotee is well versed in like Sastra, and he knows like so many slokas, it's not really symptomatic of his advancement in Krishna consciousness. So my question is, okay, of course I'm a neophyte, but those who are on the second platform, like Madhya Adhikaris, do they consider themselves, because the second class devotee has discrimination and he's able to preach. So do they consider themselves second-class devotees, or is it that whether you're a neophyte, Madhyamadikari, or Uttamadikari, you always consider yourself a neophyte? Because I've noticed that some devotees, they might be on that platform, but then they get puffed up thinking they're on that platform and they fall down. So what is the proper understanding for the second-class devotee?
Yeah, ideally, you'll see, you could, again, observing the mood and the way of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our own Srila Prabhupada, one never considers oneself to be like, you can see Bhaktivinoda says, oh, I'm still a fallen and conditioned soul. So the Madhyama Adhikari, he exhibits there's actually many symptoms of a Madhyama Adhikari. Sometimes, often we say, Madhyama Adhikari means preacher. But what is a preacher? Then you got to like define that. There's a lot of aspects to that. So sometimes we think just because you're a preacher, you're a Madhyama Adhikari. No, absolutely not. So there's many details to what a Madhyama Adhikari is, but the Madhyama Adhikari himself never considered himself to be above, like, everyone else. In his preaching, he's very strong. But he himself, in his internal mood and attitude, is that of a low, humble servant. And that should be maintained. As soon as that's gone, then you lost it. As soon as you think, now I'm above, now I know so much, now I'm a Madhyama Adhikari, then you've kind of lost the mood and attitude. That is a symptom of Madhyama Adhikari, that he remains humble and he remains humble in his approach of devotional service. So yeah, it's an important principle. But yeah, the Madhyama Adhikari and the Uttamadikari, it's only the neophyte that is puffed up. You'll see that as a symptom. The neophytes are puffed up, but the devotees on the platform, because they understand what is devotional service. That's what it means to be Madhyama, to actually encapsulate and understand what is devotional service, because they should be able to give it to others. So they exhibit those moods of humility and surrender, whereas a neophyte will often try to exhibit the mood and the activities of a Uttama Adhikari and a Madhyama Adhikari. But they'll be puffed up doing that. So it's often a symptom of a neophyte to be puffed up, not that of a Madhyama. So it's important to, not that, it's not that a neophyte goes, yes, I'm a neophyte. And I'm like, so no, it's like generally neophytes are, they know a little and they think they know so much. They heard a little and they think they know so much. They did a little kirtan and they think there's some big, on the level of bhava. We don't need anything else. So it's important to recognize that. It's very difficult. That's why he was saying that it's hard to recognize the movements of a Vaishnava. Who is a Vaishnava? Who is not a Vaishnava? So it requires a lot of sincerity, a lot of purification to be able to see. We have to see through our own desires and own desire for, sometimes somebody may praise us, and then therefore we may worship them just because they give us a lot of praise and think, oh, now this person is very advanced actually. Sometimes we get on this false platform. So anyways, there's a lot of details to that, but yeah, the internal mood and attitude, the intrinsic, it's not separate from Bhakti, the tinadapi sunichena tarapi saishna. It's a central point. It's like a very surrender and humility. I mean, it's the symptoms of surrender. They go hand in hand, It's like you can't have puffed up bhakti. It doesn't exist. And bhakti is done in humility, dainya. Dainya atma nivedanam. Way of surrender is that. So it must be maintained. That can never be like, wear this around your neck, like, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this verse, tinadapi sunishana, you should wear this around your neck. Always remember things with this principle. So it should be maintained. Is there any other question? Suresh, Prabhu?
So like you mentioned, sometimes a devotee who doesn't get glorified so much, he'd be like a simple temple sweeper. He may have some of the best qualities, but doesn't have the largest impact in the sense of like making devotees, distributing a lot of books or something like that. And then at least in the recent history and the movement, those who came in with a lot of charisma and just naturally very attractive personalities, but although they may not even be able to follow simple things like the four regs, or they may not be chanting the rounds, so it seems like the principle of purity is the force or is compromised there, but they're making devotees, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says you can measure a Vaishnava, how many Vaishnavas they make, and some of them had a lot of success, but they either fell down or maybe and then transformed themselves over time. But it seems like more emphasis is given to like just remaining engaged in Sankirtan and like trying to serve the spiritual master. It doesn't seem like your own purity seems to actually have much of an impact.
That is purity. To surrender to the spiritual master. There's no separate thing. You can't separate the two. You can be purified by surrender to the spiritual master. And how to understand this, that, purity is the force and a Vaishnava is judged by how many devotees he can make. Well, they're running on the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. We're not running on our own, endeavor. So you can see that sometimes the Guru empowers us to do certain things that actually for you is not possible. But when you don't recognize that, the Guru may use the instrument as long as he wants, and then you feel, now retract. And then you see fall, being finished, gone. So we should never take, even if we are, whatever, maybe we may be humble and whatever, hopefully don't think I am humble, but we should see that it's directly the mercy of the Guru that it is happening. I have nothing to do with this actually. My only credit, as Srila Prabhupada says, I'm acting as the instrument of the spiritual master. So it's not that, can we take now the principle, well, purity is the force and you can judge a Vaishnava by how many devotees he made. Yeah, that is there, but they're running on the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. They're running on the mercy of their own spiritual master. And sometimes it may be that we become puffed up by such things, and then everything is taken away. So we have to, everything we see has to be done under the principles of devotional service, and there's many principles to understand. So we can't take it as that, well, does our own purity not have to come about? Well, that is the most important thing. Save yourself before you save everyone else. The simple sweeper, and as Guru Maharaj was saying, that devotee in Chicago, I forget Prabhu's name. Jitendriya Prabhu, simple devotee just going on day in, day out. And nobody's going to say Jaya to him when he goes back home back to Godhead. It's but that's the point. You attain the perfection of life. You actually satisfied your spiritual master by your surrender. That's the point of life. And the spiritual master doesn't really actually obviously he wants that, but he really cares that the disciple becomes pure. That's actually what the spiritual master ultimately cares about. That's what we're singing every morning, that the spiritual master engages his disciples in proper service. So ultimate goal of life is to please the spiritual master, and if you do that just by your own self-purification, you did everything. You don't have to do anything, really. That person who was simple, he did everything. Even the preacher made so many devotees, and that's, of course, the spiritual master is always grateful for that, but he neglected his own spiritual life, or became puffed up and forgot where the real energy and knowledge is coming from. The spiritual master is not particularly completely, pleased with him compared to the sweeper, simple sweeper, who imbibed and completely captured what it means to be a devotee. And he went back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada says that even if we make one pure devotee from all of this endeavor, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, I don't care for all of these things. Just make one pure devotee. That we shall consider to be all successful. So we have to see through this lens. And then through this lens, we have to distribute many books and we have to make many devotees. It's not that because you make many devotees, you become puffed up. So don't do that. Just clean the floor. And if you have a qualification to do so, then we should. But we should study, we should understand how to do that. So it's very important. Yeah, because it sometimes can seem like that. We had so many big devotees and we're doing so many big things, but they fall down, but they forgot where the storehouse of energy and the mercy is coming from. So this is important things. Kalki Prabhu.
Krishna. There's one small comment, but in the, I forget the exact verse, but in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when it's discussed about the Uttama Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Kanishta Adhikari, there's a verse, I don't know if you know it, Mitravan, but it's something along the lines of, was it Shraddhe Adhikari, Kanishta Madhyama, something like that. Anyways, but the verse is that, you know?
No.
Kanishta Madhyama.
Oh, yeah. Kanishta, okay.
Adhikari. So that verse states that pretty much the difference between the three levels of devotees is judged according to one's faith. So that's like an important consideration when observing those things. And I was just thinking about it when the whole discussion was going on, but it can be extremely complicated actually, because one thing is that every devotee is like different, and then kind of, those are like guidelines in Shastra, but then it's like, they may be like overlapping. Someone's preaching and doing different things and they have a clear understanding, but then they may like be nasty with devotees also. So then it's like, okay, is that person like a Kanishta Adhikari? It's, it's like, it can be, and then also too, we're talking about, that's just like one example, but then, for instance, we're discussing, okay, like someone's preaching, doing different things, and then they have like some difficulties, but then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expresses that to Rupa Goswami, that when cultivating devotional service, there's weeds there and those things. So that's all the way up until like one achieves perfection. There's always like different things one can get allured by, and that may get more and more subtle. Just a couple things there, but so anyways, the point is that it can be difficult to actually like gauge that. But the Shastra like says that it has to be seen according to faith, and then how that manifests from person to person may be different. But we see also too with like Srila Prabhupada, for instance, I mean, just like his example, that at least like externally, like initially before he kind of like took sannyas and then came to the West, it didn't really like seem like, he was like, whatever, like a Madhyama Adhikari, so to say, because he wasn't, a sannyasi, he wasn't preaching and doing all these different things. But that was like exhibited when he came to like the West, all those things were showed. And then his extreme faith was also like displayed, like, of course, verbally, but also like practically. So then that's another thing, that faith ultimately isn't like something that one vocalizes, but it's like shown by one's like behavior and actions.
Yeah.
Anyways, just a couple like ideas.
It requires the individual devotee to be very conscious actually, in order to like, when we're talking about these different weeds and all, like constantly analyzing sometimes like what devotees say and what we've done and how it impacts in our day and other people's lives. Like we should be conscious of that, because at a certain point, after you go over your bhakti program and you've been in devotions for certain years, like they all become like people. It's kind of hard to see, and it's hard to judge devotees at a certain point. So like for ourselves, we have to like be in like a little bit out, like conscious, like okay, if I did this and kind of this was said, and how did that situation come about? Do I have a separate desire from? So one should be able to see through like the lens of Srila Prabhupada's books and analyze every situation, situations in which sometimes things become little here and there, or it feels like, okay, I'm deviating now from this, I got to pull myself back. So you should learn how to do that also, in order to make sure that the Bhakti Lata Bij is watered properly. Vamsi Prabhu, you have something? Oh, Mataji, you have something? Any questions? No? Okay, Vamsi Prabhu.
This factor of cool-headedness you said in services. So sometimes cool-headedness means, you have to take corrective measures and, you have to take prompt action so that the service doesn't get disrupted. Like like Guru Maharaj often says that, people just talking about problems, but if you don't have solution, just what's the point? You are finding problems, these are the problems, but if you are specifying a problem, then come with a solution also, he tells. Once in Baroda, we had this problem, Brahman initiated devotees, they are not doing their services of pujari services, or you have to get hire people for that services. So then one day he called a meeting and he told, the corrective measure that if you have taken Brahman initiation, then why don't you serve? Come and serve in the temple. So he discussed the problem and he came to a corrective measure where he had to be straightforward and tell the fact to the devotees, So cool-headedness means, what do you suggest? Then cool-headedness means, does it just, we have to humbly just go through whatever is going on, or some corrective measures that require some, sometimes you have to be maybe the person in front may not like the correction, or, that means it is a hard measure we have to take. So what do you say on this?
It's kind of hard for me to understand. Every situation is different. Now, it's when devotees have problems, it depends on who has a problem also. Some may be dependents, and they may not have a solution. Some may be dependents, they may be younger, they may not have so much knowledge in how to go about that problem, so they may address it. So then we got to see how to understand them and see how to address it, because all of us don't know how to solve a problem. So sometimes we may have problems within devotion service or different services, and so then we may approach a senior. But then if we're told, if you have a problem and you don't have a solution, don't approach me for it, that's not very good. But if we have a problem, but it's like sometimes there's situations out there where there's problems and there's no other solution. That's the case. Okay, there's a problem, but this is all we can do right now. We can't. This situation is like that. This is where we're at. But it should be seen that it depends. If there's dependents that are not exactly there to be able to come up with a solution, they may express problems, and then they may have to be taught, hey, explain in a nice way what the situation is and how to deal with that situation. And in terms of tolerating, in terms of how to go on if there's difficulties and if there's things there are problems, like I said, like I'm saying, see if we can solve them. If not, then we have to see how to continue, how to view it in a devotional way, how to see it in such a way that Krishna is giving me this test. And then if we're properly situated in that, then Krishna will guide us in how to overcome that problem, give us intelligence, give us the proper right way to do such things. I've seen that in my own life, and within the journey of Krishna life itself, we've seen that many times, in which there's situations that, we have a problem and we talk about it, we don't have a solution. Okay, just go on. And then we get a solution coming about somehow or other. So sometimes, we have to learn to tolerate some problems that are there, issues that are there, just tolerate it, go on. Don't become disturbed and think about, maybe I should leave devotional service and go and do something else. We should maintain the attitude of, surrender to Krishna, okay, there's a problem, but let me see how I can work around it. How can I work around it? The biggest problem is generally people, not so much services. So service is easy. How hard is it to mop a floor, sweep a floor, and issue books? What's the difficulty? So we should see how to work with it, how to humble up, surrender. Also sometimes problems may be genuine, so how to address that. So it's a little more complicated, depends on the thing. I can't give a straight answer for that one. Is there any other thing? Anything from the Matajis at all? No? Any other devotees? No? Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.